trustee's office came into being back in 1833. The state of Indiana established townships in all counties throughout basically the state to assist with government. Basically, that was grassroots government back then. Instead of people have to go from the southwest corner of the township or the county to the center of the county back in the 1800s, I mean, the only way they could do it was either walk or by horse. So what they did is they came up with township government, where people go to those units of government and do all of their business that they needed to get done and get back home all in the same day. The township back in the 1800s, when it originally started, it took care of a lot of government things. For instance, schools. Schools was a big, they hired the teachers, they were basically like the superintendent is nowadays. We also deal with the fire service. We were responsible for providing fire service protection for the community, but that didn't come actually until later, but they were eventually responsible for protecting the people. In this community, in Clay Township, we still support the fire department, even though the city of Carmel pays 80% of the fire department's budget. Well, I have Southwest Clay and Home Place, which is still in the unincorporated part of the township, which is Carmel. As of June of next year, when Southwest Clay is annexed, then the only portion that I will have is actually Home Place, which I will pay 1 to 2% of the fire department's budget. But over the years, you know, we've continued to see those kind of changes with the onslaught of cities and towns. There are issues where these townships have no cities and towns. And so they do look more toward their township government to help them out in any way they can. Not only was schools and the fire protection an important part of it, but there's many other parts of township government that people don't realize today that we deal with. We deal with township assistance. We deal with weeds and fence rows. Back in the early part of the century, when these farmers had issues with their fence rows of not taking care of detrimental plants and noxious weeds, that became an issue. They had these kind of plants in fence rows and stuff like that. These farmers would fight this constantly, and of course you can only think back then, what did they really have to control it but cut it down over and over and over, you know, and turn the soil, hoping that they could kill it. But it still exists today. Here are again 170 years, 180 years later, and we're still dealing with this. But it's in a different way. We have houses on every corner anymore and businesses. And I get phone calls of people upset because their neighbor didn't mow their yard, or with the foreclosures that's going on right now, we're having a big issue with that. So I have to deal with mortgage companies, banks and stuff like that to help get rid of this. Now, the way my office handles it is, if I get a complaint, then I will visit the location and make a determination whether these are detrimental plants or noxious weeds. Okay, if I have a question, you can not only myself, but you can also call the Hamilton County Extension Office up in Noblesville, and they can also help out in this area. But it's my job to go out there and investigate it, and within the first 48 hours, I can receive the call. Once I determine if there is a noxious weed or detrimental plant in there, then I will come back. I will send a certified letter to the owner, and they have 5 days to after they sign the certified letter, they have 5 days to correct the problem. If not, then I have a crew that I send out, that I hired, that I send out to cut it down, spray it, whatever I have to do to eradicate it. Let's face it, we're not going to get rid of it. It's going to continue to come back. And some of these plants, such as the Canadian thistle and the Johnson grass, is just grows like wildfire. It's a perennial plant, and it grows. It will extend underground. My biggest issue, and I feel bad for people, whether it's a business or whether it's a resident out here that lives next to a house where the resident doesn't mow his yard, doesn't take care of his yard, or it's foreclosed and nobody lives in there. Not only do you have these plants and these weeds growing, but then you have a problem, as this starts to grow up, then you have a rodent problem. So now we have to bring in the health department and everybody else, but it's important that people continue to take care of their property. I had a situation where in a very affluent area of Carmel, where they had to foreclose on a house. The lawn wasn't taken care of. 2 doors down, I had a guy that was trying to sell his house, and when the people came in to look at his house, they refused the deal because of the way the house down the street looked. And you know, you have to have some feelings for that person. You know, here he is, he's trying to do the right thing, and then you have somebody that doesn't take responsibility and take care of that lawn like it should. So, and I'm seeing more and more of this kind of stuff. It becomes a neighborhood disputes over these things, and you know, yeah, we're in the middle of it. Cemeteries is another one. In cemeteries, I take care of 4 in this township, and that's the Whitechapel, the Farley at 106th and Keystone, the Pleasant Grove at 106th and College, and the Cavalry Cemetery at 96th Street in Shelburne. And I take care of the mowing. I am responsible, and this is by state statute. I'm responsible to making sure that they are kept up by mowing, by refurbishing the headstones, by making sure that there's a fence around it, and anything that needs to be taken care of. And where that came into being was because of, again, the noxious weeds and detrimental plants. You know, since we took care of that, township government took care of that, then that was another part of taking care of cemeteries, was because of the weeds. I take care of these cemeteries in this township because basically they've been abandoned. And that's part of our responsibility as a township government. When you have this, and there's over 25,000 cemeteries in this state. Even though there's over 1,000 townships, that's a lot of cemeteries. And the ones that are abandoned, or where an organization has come in and requested that they don't have the funds to support it and take care of it, then the township is by law required to take care of those. Some of the things that we do is we mow them, which is a big issue, which, again, going back, talking about the weed control problem, that's how I think a part of that came into play, was we were responsible for weed control. We take care of the fences to make sure that they have a fence around them, which is also stated in the statute that that's one requirement. They have to have a fence around them. Some of the cemeteries that I deal with here, I am upgrading them. I am putting a lot of work into them. One group of people, the Boy Scouts of America, I've got some that come to me that's one of the Eagle projects, and they've done a fantastic job of going in there, cleaning them up, leveling the stones. And I've even got organizations that want to sponsor a cemetery. And that started again with the Boy Scouts. So we constantly have something going on with these stones and the graveyard that we have to maintain. They're a very fragile part of our life. You know, when you look at these cemeteries, they're pioneer cemeteries. We go back to the 1830s. And when you turn around and you know, one of the things when I came into this job was I got interested in genealogy. Because of taking care of these cemeteries, I'd walk out there and I'd seen my family buried out there too. But I had people coming in my office and asking about, you know, where is this cemetery or where is that cemetery? because they would like to go and find their ancestors. And that meant a lot to me. I mean, you know, some of them don't have signs that state that which cemetery is which. And so that, again, that's something that I feel like as part of taking care of that cemetery, I want to do for the community and people's ancestors. I want to, I mean, that's a big part of our history out there. To go back and think what happened several years ago, what did they go through when they moved here. And so I find that quite interesting and truly enjoy taking care of these cemeteries. As part of my job of taking care of the cemeteries, one of the biggest parts of it is actually the headstones. Over the years, those stones begin to deteriorate, and they need a lot of work done on them, whether they're fractured, whether people go in and break them accidentally or on purpose, or while people mow it and they hit the stones and they knock them over. There's a lot of things that can happen to these stones over the years. I mean, we're talking about going back to 180 years ago, 170, 80 years ago, so that you definitely need to upkeep them. One of the things I've done as trustee with these cemeteries is I've hired John Walters, which is a graveyard company that comes in and repairs headstones. And like I say, you see a lot of damage done on these headstones and over the years, and the deterioration from the weather. So we have to bring people in to do this, and it's a very meticulous job. It's something that you have to be trained and really know what you're doing, because you have to know what type of stone you're working with. And John is excellent doing this. He went to one of my cemeteries and found all the headstones of all the names we have except for 2. Not only did he find the headstones, but he found the footstones that go along with this. You don't see footstones very often here anymore, and it's pretty amazing to go back to the 1830s of a group of people, you know, that were buried in that one cemetery, and to go back and find their footstones and everything. It's pretty impressive of the work he does, and it's just so important, because if you didn't know, if you didn't know those people were buried there, you know, what would keep somebody from coming in there and destroying the area? And it might be your own family that's buried there. Of course, DNR, Department of Natural Resources, anytime construction is done within 100 feet of cemeteries, you have to report it to them. But as we know, there's sometimes that doesn't always happen. And if you ever see that, you need to make sure you call your township government or your county or the Department of Natural Resources to let them know what's going on. Okay, there's several ways people come in to the office here for township assistance. There's this where they end up losing their jobs, maybe because they've downsized, maybe they've closed their doors because of the economy, maybe they've had medical expenses that they've had to pay for, and so they can't support their family. But one thing that we are going to assist them with is the rent, the utilities, food, stuff like this, to help them get through. Okay, this is not a long-term type thing, but we're in a position to be able to help these people in these kind of predicaments. We concentrate basically on emergency needs and the basic needs. You know, your living, rent, utilities. Usually it's gas and electric where we assist people. For energy assistance, we have community action office up in Noblesville that will also assist people. But here we want you to know that one thing you don't want to happen is have your utilities shut off, because we cannot pay for reconnection fees or deposits. All we can pay is for the consumption of the electricity or the gas, whichever it may be. So you need to make sure you get to us before that happens, because it becomes a lot more difficult to get your power or your gas turned back on. You will have to sign a release for us. You will pick up a packet that you will take home with you, because there's a lot of criteria that you will have to follow up in. A lot of times we get people that calls us, and then they cut in because they're in a rush. They need to get this paid or that paid, and it doesn't work quite that way. I mean, we move pretty quickly, but again, we have to follow these guidelines. A lot of people misinterpret that, and they think that it's emergency assistance, so we can get it right now. That's not true. We have a process that we have to go through, and you have to work with us. You have to be out there and trying to find a job. It may not be the job that you want, but you know, there are jobs out there, and we try to help people as much as we can, and they just need to follow up. Follow up is sometimes hard to get through people's head. You know, we want to help, but you got to do your part too. So always, you know, when you complete this packet, you call us back. We'll set up an appointment with our caseworker. She'll set an appointment. You come in, you sit down, and we can do this usually within the week. If you come in on a Monday, we're going to get you in here this week, majority of the time. And she will sit down. She'll go through your you know, everything with your finances and everything. Which brings me to another point here, that we have survival skills class that our caseworker teaches. That she will go through some of the day-to-day needs, from child care to your finances, crisis management, and there's a whole slew of those items that we can tell you about or talk to you about when you come in here. In my office, I'm very fortunate. I have a small staff, but a good staff. I got 2 staff people. One's a caseworker and one's my clerk. They, even though it's small, they do an awful lot. And they save this township a lot of money from the work that they do. In addition, we have 3 great board members, Mary Eckerd, Doc James Dillon, and Paul Boland. They basically give me the approval. Every year we go through the budget process. They give me the approval to spend money for taking care of township assistants, the park or the cemeteries, the weeds that we have, problem that we have. They, you know, pay for, or they appropriate the money to take care of this building that we are in, plus the fire department at the other end, Station 45. They also, we pay a portion of the park's budget. We pay a portion of the fire department's budget for the unincorporated part of this township. You know, so I owe them a lot, and I appreciate the job that they do. But if you ever have a question about township government or would like to talk to someone, they all 3 are very knowledgeable. They've all been experienced past board members, so they've been around here for a long time. And you know, if you ever want to talk to one, feel free to give them a call. As you can see, the Office of Township Trustee has a variety of responsibilities. As we go forward, one thing I would like to say, and that is, if anything, what this office does in this community is important that it remains in this community. It needs to be closer to the people as it was 170 years ago. I feel that it's important that we continue to serve the community as it has in the past.